Right. Okay. Let's start with the demo session today for Oracle 12c database administration. Let me give you a quick introduction before we start. My name is Amit Kaur, and I have been working in this industry for more than 15 plus years now. My primary area of focus has always been Oracle database. I have worked as an Oracle database developer and an administrator in the last 15 years. I've worked with many companies. You can name them like IBM or Infosys, or you can say Sony, many of these companies as a consultant for their database requirements. My primary area of focus has been database administration from the last almost about 10 years. Before that, yes, I was a developer, and from the last 10 years I've been into database administration. Now, when we say database administration, what comes to our mind? Let's see. Now, the moment somebody talks about a developer, their primary job is to write your SQL statements or PL SQL code. But then as a database administration, the responsibilities change a lot. Here, we need to first of all understand what is exactly a database, because the way a developer looks at the database is very different from the way an administrator looks at the database. So yes, I'll give you a quick introduction to what exactly a database or Oracle database specifically looks like. Okay, before that, yes, who should attend this course? Database administrators, system administrators, developers. But the prerequisite is you should have some kind of a knowledge on Oracle, and of course you should be very familiar with SQL, which I'm sure you all are. So as a database administrator, what all are we going to go through in this course? We are going to look at the basic administration of database. We are also going to look at the database architecture and how its components work and interact with one another. How do we create an operational database and manage the various structures? Performance monitoring, very important. Database security, user management, and backup and recovery techniques. So we are basically here talking about the roles to be played by a database administrator. What are the jobs to be done by the database administrator? Now, what exactly, this is what I was talking about earlier. I'll tell you quickly about what exactly is an Oracle database. So if you have been a developer, then you have been interacting with your database at a conceptual view, right, or also known as a logical level. Now, in this conceptual view or in this logical level, what you have been working with is mainly the tables or the indexes or the raw data, writing a SQL. But what exactly happens in the database when we create a table? Or is there a file getting created somewhere? Now, these are some basic questions that come to our mind. So, when we talk about an Oracle database, we basically talk about two types of structures of the database, a logical structure and a physical structure. Now, the physical structure of the database is where the physical files are present. Now, these physical files can be present in a hard disk or in a shared network device. But yes, we are basically talking about the physical files of the database. And logically, this physical file data, how do we interact with it? Remember that there is a a rule of a database. Now these were the rules which were given by E.F. Codd, who had come up with the relational concept. Now one of the rules, it basically said that we will not directly interact with the physical structure. There has to be a logical structure of the database, and the changes will be made at the logical level, which in turn will change the data in the physical level. So yes, physically an Oracle database is a collection of some set of files. Now what files are they? They are data files, online redo log files, and control files. Now let me quickly show you what am I talking about. When we say, now this is my database that I have logged into, my database name and how is it opened. It is in a read-write mode. Now when we say what is the physical structure of the database, as I said, there are three types of files. It contains something called as data files, which contains the actual data of our database. Data like our table data, our index data, our undo data, our temporary data, everything is present in these data files. Then we also have something called as online redo log files. Remember, these online redo log files are some kind of a backup feature which Oracle gives us by default. So these contain the record of changes made to the database, which of course helps in recovery of the data in case of failures. And control files, which contains information about the data files and the log files. So control files is one of the first files to be opened and read. Let me quickly show you these files that we have here. I am of course going to show you from the data dictionaries. As I just said, we have data files. So we have a data dictionary called DBA data files. These are the physical files which are present in our database. And similarly, we have log files. Let me show you the log files. We will query a data dictionary called $log file. From $log file, you will also have a look at, we have three different log files which are used in a round-robin fashion, which means redo 1 gets filled and then redo 2 and then redo 3 and then it comes back to redo 1 and then redo 2 and redo 3. So this is how it goes on, writing into the log files about all the changes that are being made in the database. Now if I've created a table, it's definitely a change, so it gets recorded. If I insert some data, it's a change, it gets recorded. But if it is a SQL statement, if I just write a select statement, is that a change? No. So that does not get recorded. So remember, a lot of times people say, oh, every statement that I give in the database is getting recorded. No. Every change that happens in the database gets recorded in the log file. And then we have another file called control file, which I just told you is the most important file in our database. So this contains the name of the data files and the control files. So this is the first file to be opened and read, right? So we have a set of control files, which of course, if you notice the second one, it is in the recovery area. So it's more like a backup for us. Now, this was about the physical structure of the database. Logically, a database has a hierarchical structure. An Oracle database contains something of or is made up of table spaces logically. A table space contains one or more segments. Remember, your tables, your indexes, they are all segments. A segment is made up of extents. An extent is made up of the logical data blocks. And of course, a block is the smallest unit for read and write. So let me quickly show you the table spaces name that we have in our database right now. Now these table spaces, remember, are mapped to these data files. So if you would like to see what is the file name for it, What is the corresponding file name? You can see it here. Have a look at this. Okay, here of course we will have only the table space names. Right. So there is a data dictionary called DBA data files where we can see both the things. We can see the table space name and the corresponding file name. This gives us the mapping between the logical structure and the physical structure of our database. Right? Now, this is the basics of, as I said, the database architecture. We will go further and also understand what is an Oracle instance, something very, very important. This is the first thing that gets started when we start a database. It contains the system global area, which is nothing but a shared memory structure for all the users which are going to use this database, and a set of background processes that are used to manage the database. One instance can open only one database, but one database can definitely have multiple instances working for it. So Oracle instance we will have a look at in details when we go through this course. Let me quickly tell you what all is covered in this course for you. We will first look at the database architecture, a very, very quick look I have given you there. Then we are going to, in details, discuss about the process architecture, the process structure. And we are also going to look at what exactly happens whenever a SQL statement is given, whenever a DML is given or a DDL is given, what exactly happens in this memory structure. Right? Then we'll go further and also look at how do we manage the database instance with the help of different tools given by Oracle. We have something called as the Enterprise Management, and we have something called as SQL Plus, which you saw I was just using. We will also have a look at how do we use SQL Developer, which is a tool mainly used by developers, but as a DBA also we can use it. So we will look at how do we manage database instance, and then for the database instance something very important is present called a parameter file. For setting up the instance we have something called as a parameter file. So the parameter settings are present here. So we'll see what kind of parameter files are present, when exactly it is used, or how do we make changes in it. Then of course, as a database administrator, it will be my job to configure the client and the server. So we will look at how do we configure the Oracle network environment here. So we will look at the net services, the net listener, how do we configure the listener here, right? So all this will be discussed in this part of the course where we are going to configure the server and the client. Then as a database administrator, I should first understand how exactly the data is stored in my database in the logical structure. You remember we were just looking at the table spaces here. So we will go through this in detail, saying how do we create them and how do we change its sizes and what happens exactly when it's reaching its maximum, and then how do we add the files, how do we remove the files, how do we take a backup of the files. All this we will discuss when we come to managing database storage structures. Going further, another important job of the database administrator is to create users and make sure that our users have proper account, we have proper account and they have the proper privileges. So all that we will discuss here. We will talk about the privileges, the roles and profiles. Profiles is again a set of limits that we can give for the user. Going further, we will have a look at how do we manage data concurrency, and I'm sure you understand that data concurrency is one of the very, very important things to be discussed in a OLTP kind of an environment, right? So we will look at how the data gets locked when there are concurrent users trying to access the data. What are the implicit logs, what are the explicit logs, how does a log conflict occur, and as a database administrator, how do we take care of removing these logs, right? Then going further, we will also look at something called as managing undo data. Remember, all the changes that we are making in the database with the help of a DML, we can undo those changes, right? So we very well are aware of something called as a rollback. So how does that rollback actually occur? As a database administrator, how do we manage the undo data or the undo table space? As you can see here, we have a data table space by name undo table space. So this is configured by a database administrator. What exactly is done here? How do we configure for the undo table space? All that will be discussed in managing undo data. Another responsibility of a database administrator is to audit our database. Again, we are trying to just keep a track of what all the users are doing, right? So we are going to go through the database auditing here. We'll look at the different levels of auditing that can be done. We will talk about every time the user connects, every time the user disconnects, every time the user gives a DDL. I would like an audit record to be present in my data dictionary. Remember, all this information goes into your data dictionary. So we'll discuss that here in details. Going further, now, another important job of a database administrator is to maintain the database. Now, what all does maintaining a database consist of? When we say database maintenance, we are basically talking about looking at the some kind of alert history, and we also have something called as automatic workload repository, which was a feature given by Oracle only from 10G onwards, where the database itself takes a snapshot of the database, the load snapshot of the database, and stores the information in the automatic workload repository. Now, there is also another tool called Automatic Database Diagnostic Monitor, which again generates alerts for us whenever there is a alert. Or I'll take an example here. Whenever there are alerts like your table space is reaching the maximum, or your undo table space is reaching the maximum. Now all these kind of alerts are stored in our alert history. We will also check where exactly do we look at these alert histories and what to be done. Another important job of a database administrator is to manage performance of the database. Now, there are so many users trying to access the data, trying to manipulate the data at the same time. So how does the database perform at that time? Now, performance tuning is one of the most important jobs for a database administrator, where we take care of instance tuning, we take care of table space tuning, we take care of SQL tuning. SQL tuning is, a lot of times people ask me, SQL tuning, don't you think is a part of database developers' job? It is, no doubt. But to tell you the truth, when we talk about managing performance, there is no clear line which divides the database developer's job and the administrator's job. A lot of times an administrator has to do the tuning. So SQL tuning, let me show you one example here. SQL tuning can be done by developers, yes, but let us say I'm a database administrator who is involved in even doing the SQL tuning, but I was not involved at the time of writing the SQL. So it gives us, if somebody gives us a session saying, oh, this session is running very slow, now what do I do? So it becomes very difficult for a database administrator to find out what may be the problem with the SQL. So Oracle gives us something called a SQL Tuning Advisor. As you can see here, SQL Tuning Advisor, which helps us in giving pointers. It just gives us pointers saying, okay, this may be the problem area. So let me quickly show you an example of the SQL Tuning Advisor. I have got a tuning code written here for us so that we don't spend our time on this. Let me show you here. Have a look at this. I've got a SQL tuning code which is using the tuning advisor. I've got this select statement which is giving me a problem. Now this select statement is what I would like to tune, but I don't know exactly how many indexes are there, whether there are indexes present or not. So I want information from Oracle itself. Now where do you think the Oracle is getting this information from? It's all in the automatic workload repository, where it stores information about how the statement is performing, what indexes are present, can it use the indexes. Now all that will come with the help of SQL Tuning Advisor. So we created a tuning task. I've stored this whole select statement in one of the variables. As you can see, it's a CLOB variable. Then I've created a tuning task. Okay, and I'm just going to create and store this tuning task. Okay, there's all possibility that my tuning task is already there. Yes, because I've created it earlier. So let me quickly drop this tuning task. This is what I should have executed first. Just give me a second. Okay, now let me go back to this. I've dropped it because this information gets stored in your database. So I have to drop the tuning task first, as it was already existing, and I've created it again. Right? Now what exactly are we doing here? We are just storing our problematic statement, or a statement which I would like to see, can it be tuned further? Do we have better ways of writing the statement, or can we create some new indexes? All these are the kind of advices that will be given by the SQL Tuning Advisor. Right? Now, once you create this tuning task, we have to execute the tuning task, which basically means this is when it actually creates the set of advices. Right? Now this is where it actually goes and gets a set of advices. Now to see what is the advice it's giving us, we are going to execute a function called a report tuning task. I'm sure we very well know how do we call a procedure, how do we call a function, all the differences there. Right? Have a look at this. Okay. Now it's not giving me the whole information because of a setting called long. So let me quickly do that setting so that we can see the whole information here. Please have a look at this. The report tuning task. Of course, here it says there are no recommendations, but I'm just trying to show you that this is how we can use this SQL Tuning Advisor, and it can give us the whole list of recommendations. Now, the recommendations can be for creating new indexes, or maybe changing the way we have written the statement, or the way we have ordered our from clause and the where clause. All this information is given by our tuning advisor. So going back to this, I just gave you an example on SQL Tuning Advisor. Now remember, this doesn't do tuning for us. It just gives us some kind of pointer saying, okay, this is the place you can start with, because not only as an administrator, even as a developer, if I have joined this database later and I am given a job for tuning my database, it gets very difficult for me to understand what exactly is happening. So this gives us some kind of starters. As I told you, we will, one of our responsibilities is to manage space. As a database administrator, I will be involved in reducing row chaining and migration. And then we will also have a look at the different types of segments. Very, very important from a database administrator's point of view, one job is backup. Now we need to create backup strategies where we think about all the possible failure scenarios and then create a backup strategy. Oracle from past few versions has given us a very amazing feature called flashback. Now flashback is something which we can do even after we have dropped our tables or we have committed our transactions. We can still do this flashback. So that is inbuilt recovery feature which Oracle has given us. Then we will also look at what are the different types of failures that can occur and how do we recover in such failure scenarios, right? One more job that a database administrator does is moving data using either Oracle Data Pump or SQL Loader or external tables, where we are moving data from one database to the other, one environment to the other. It can be from a development, it can be from a production environment to a development environment. So all this is a job of a database administrator. This was to tell you about what all you are going to go through in this course. Now, if you have any questions to be asked, you can please ask me. I am going to unmute you so that you can ask me the questions.